Mr. Dakota, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Thank you. Welcome to the Human Resources and Labor Relations Subcommittee. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Chairperson Clark,
Here.
Mr. Dakota,
Here.
Ms. Mott.
Here.
3 present.
The purpose of this meeting is to go through the superintendent's evaluation and also to review the job descriptions that are currently in the suspense account. In addition to the subcommittee members that are here, I would like to acknowledge that we have Ms. Jackie Doherty, Mayor Leahy, and committee member Mike Dillon, and committee member Dominic Lay. Welcome, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Boyd, would you like to take over and begin your presentation?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Is it possible to have the presentation loaded? I'm assuming with those comments, the committee would like me to move through the slide deck that was part of your packet.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. As we're getting it loaded, also want to acknowledge the full executive cabinet is here. They will respond to any questions related to specific data or work products within their areas of support.
Can I just ask a question? We're doing the evaluation, right?
Correct, we're going to start with the evaluation first.
Okay, but we don't need to ask the cabinet questions, right? We're doing a review.
If there's questions about the work product, Mr. Mayor, or if there's questions about the data, then they're available to provide those answers. So an evaluation, as I understand it and as I've experienced it, an evaluation of the executive is an evaluation of the organization for that year. So the outcomes and the artifacts that you've been provided.
It's just new to me. I've never done it that way, but, okay.
Is it lined up?
Thank you, please.
It's on. Okay, thank you. All right, so you see the end of what I'll be prepared to share with you tonight is the end of year reflection on school year 2021 with some selected highlights, as well as our opportunities for growth going into school year 21-22. We'll go through the goals that we approved together in the fall, and then through each standard according to the work products that we've collectively accomplished here this year. If you recall this spreadsheet with the minute font, we looked at and said it was quite ambitious during the course of this unprecedented year. The committee adopted these goals for this year, and I will tell you without a doubt, this year has been the most difficult of my 20 years in education. Talking with people across our district and other districts, the same is said by everyone that I've spoken to who is directly involved or indirectly involved in any aspect of public education. But together, through all of that, and through all of the significant change due to the ongoing health crisis, together we were able to meet or exceed every goal and target we established at the beginning of the year. We've been able to go beyond those goals and establish some pretty extraordinary progress despite the many obstacles that were in front of us. We designed and implemented local, community-vetted, and flexible plans to safely reopen school based on all prevailing state and national COVID-19 requirements. That through those challenges did still result in one of the largest full-time in-person enrollments in the Commonwealth in September with 3,000 students. We were one of just a few of the urban communities throughout the Commonwealth that was able to bring students full-time in person at the beginning of the year. And we were able to shift between in-person and remote environments in response to health data in the winter, and also engage in a significant expansion of in-person learning to over 7,000 students in classrooms full-time currently in our schools across the district. The graduation data that was released in 2021, which reflects the class of 2020, showed an increase district-wide from 78% to 80.9% from 2019 to 20. That's the highest overall four-year cohort graduation rate since 2017. Within that, multiple demographic subgroups also realized a narrowing of the opportunity gaps, with increases in the graduation rate among Hispanic students, African American students, English learners, economically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. Also, we were able to maintain our focus on our pre-K students with both in-person and remote opportunities for pre-K students, and then within next year's budget an expansion as we continue to move towards our plans for universal pre-K long-term. The average daily attendance rate increased from 92% in the first quarter to 94% in the third quarter, nearly matching our pre-shutdown estimate of 95%. We implemented, as you know, the first ever standardized social emotional learning assessment for SEL needs, target support among our students, reducing the number of students among the highest tier from 17% to 14% from the first administration to the latest. And we've increased the number of students participating in the summer program from 1,500 in 2019 to over 3,000 this past summer, with, again, expectations that we'll increase it again. Our early college partnership with Middlesex Community College continues to thrive with significant increases in the number of students who are enrolled in one or more courses. And we're very happy with the redesign of the middle level band program that you just heard about at the prior meeting. And we still have opportunities here going into 21-22. We can't yet fully quantify the full amount of learning loss related to the COVID-19 shutdown. However, we know it will be significant. And the opportunity gaps among our diverse populations continue to persist. With the growth in graduation rate, we still have a persistently high dropout rate that we talked about at the last meeting, with over 350 students projected currently to be without a diploma, a GED, or enrolled in high school here in our community. And there are our diverse groups of students we also have to recognize include all students. So with the increases among multiple demographics in the graduation rate, our white students did not experience that same increase, and we have to make sure that our work reflects all students. Standard 2 relates to management and operations. If you recall, one of the most arduous aspects of the COVID-19 shutdown was the variability in economic forecast that we all experienced. We were able to develop throughout that multiple scenario-based budget plans for FY21 to account for every forecast we received, and that resulted in stabilized school budgets to open school in September, a balanced district-wide budget as soon as we received the final state revenue figures, and a reinvestment of approximately $10 million of cost savings in strategic initiatives in the spring. And we're planning to bring back to you another budget transfer to reinvest again here at this next school committee meeting. We implemented phase 2 of the newly overhauled school budgeting process, increasing the total direct allocation to schools from $1.8 to $148.6 million, following our differentiated autonomy model from 1% to 69% flexibility for schools over that same time period. And we improved our overall staff recruitment and diverse and district-wide hiring practices with the latest data we have from 6.8% diverse staff in 2019 to 10% in 2021. Not where we need to be, but measurable progress. And we improved the emergency safety and emergency preparedness of each school facility through our internally developed school safety audit protocol, with the average rating of being meets expectations this year. As you know, we implemented the district's first comprehensive digital learning plan, increasing the ratio of mobile devices for students from 1 to 3 to 1 to 1, and distributing nearly 13,000 mobile devices prior to the start of the school year. We've received more than $2,500,000 in new money from successful bids for local, state, and regional grants, and we negotiated improved agreements with facility and transportation vendors, resulting in more than $500,000 in savings to the FY22 budget compared to the prior forecast. We expanded and improved our grab-and-go meal service. I'm happy to report that we've now exceeded 1 million meals served since the start of this year. And we've launched a first of its kind for the district technology support system, our tech tents, with more than 10,000 work orders resolved. But again, still work to be done. Opportunities for school year 2021-2022, we still have work to do on our elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund. That's a 3-year grant cycle, and it's going to be an iterative process, and the committee set up a strategic process to continue to look at those dollars and invest those dollars wisely based on continuous feedback. And we still, of course, have continued work to do around diversity recruitment and hiring. Even though we saw an increase, 10% of our staff are identifying as diverse, whereas 75% of our students are identifying as diverse. Standard 3 is family and community engagement. We launched the district's first community-wide electronic newsletter to connect families across the district and inform families of pertinent information, while also celebrating school benchmarks and student and staff accomplishments. That's the LPS Connector newsletter I hope everybody's had a chance to see. We increased access to district information for families and community partners across the city through an expanded social media presence. We went from less than 10 per month in the year prior to my appointment to now more than 100 per month in terms of posts, and we've increased the total followers across platforms by 69% from school year 2018-19 to the current school year. We launched the district's first community satisfaction survey with more than 3,700 responses and 82% of families reporting overall satisfaction with communications and outreach. We implemented a pilot family literacy initiative at 2 schools with 87 parents participating this year and designed plans for scaling it up to the Lowell Parent Leadership Institute that we've shared preliminary plans with the committee. We expanded parental involvement in school-based budgeting, and for the first time in recent history have active school site councils at every school in the district. We improved accessibility for parental choice through the stay-at-home orders through online registration. We engaged parents in 18 virtual forums from August to May with more than 2,700 parents and guardians participating in a range of topics from our school opening plans to safety protocols to grant applications to CLSP. And we elevated student voice by establishing the district's first student advisory council with representation from a diverse cross-section of secondary students, the Lowell Student Advisory Council, which we refer to as LSAC. But we still, again, have continued work in front of us. Language access, we're making progress there, but not every family is reporting that they're receiving information in their native language, not at every step of our information process, whether it be school, classroom, or district. And there's still opportunity for us to engage greater student voice. Our LSAC actually is working through a process of greater recruitment, and just yesterday we were engaged in a discussion around what the application process will look like for new candidates for the Lowell Student Advisory Council. Standard 4 is professional culture. We were able to increase collaboration with staff across the district through 18 virtual staff forums from August to May with more than 1,800 staff members participating. And again, another one of the challenging processes here, but one that we did complete, as we negotiated one of the earliest MOAs for in-person learning among urban districts with collaborative agreements for on-campus COVID-related working conditions with both UTL and LSAA in September. We designed and implemented a locally based teacher recruitment and retention program to increase the number of teachers of color in the district. Many of you participated in their capstone presentations just last Saturday with our Diversifying Teacher Leaders Initiative. And we designed and implemented the district's first systemic approach to turning around chronically underperforming schools with this year's target of developing a collaborative asset-based observation and feedback protocol following an instructional rounds model to support teachers within the virtual setting. We developed and implemented the district's first ever anti-racism reporting protocol with defined operating procedures for investigating bias-based conduct and monitoring related improvement efforts. We developed the district's first comprehensive plan to embed culturally and linguistically sustaining practices in all schools. Again, it has been a lot of conversation among the committee, but was one of our goals for this year that we have met. And we implemented an employee commendation program to formally recognize staff members across the district whose contributions exceeded the standards outlined within their respective job descriptions, with more than 60 professional commendations issued through the Superintendent's Commendation Initiative. And you have some of those commendations within your artifacts binder. But again, there are opportunities in front of us. We currently are in open negotiations with each of our collective bargaining units. And we also have to make determinations and decisions about the implementation now of our culturally and linguistically sustaining practices plan that the committee received. So again, overall, we met or exceeded every goal and target we established at the beginning of the year. However, despite the extraordinary organizational progress that we've made so far, we still have a long way to go. The full effects of the disruption to learning that our students and families experienced this past year cannot yet be fully quantified. And those gaps in learning come on top of the opportunity gaps that our racially, linguistically, and economically diverse populations have historically experienced. As we move forward into 21-22, we must proceed with the sense of urgency that our families expect and deserve. We came into this year saying our goal was persistence, not perfection. I will tell you, I've never been prouder of an organization than I am of this one, and never prouder of a staff than I am of our staff here in Lowell Public Schools. I think they far exceeded the notion of persistence, and while we perhaps never met that unrealistic goal of perfection, extraordinary progress was made, and I truly believe that our children here in Lowell are going to be better off from having experienced this crisis here than if they experienced this crisis anywhere else, because of the hard work of our staff throughout this organization. Thank you. With that, I yield the floor, Ms. Chair.
Thank you. I would like to open it up to our subcommittee members for questions. Mr. Dakota, would you like to go first?
Sure. In terms of standard one, you've admitted that there's been a shortfall due to the pandemic, and I think we have to look at that realistically and say, how can we help our staff to get past this? And I think kind of tying this in with the standard four, I think that how we've approached our Renaissance schools and how I'm trying to help them with their goals, I think we need to support our teachers by either hiring more paras, and if the only way that we can hire more paras is that we pay them more, then I think we should pay our paras more right across the board. I know that's sounding anti contract talk, but I think if we can offer a little bit more money to maintain our paras and to hire more paras, I think we should do it. At the end of the day, that's what's going to really help our teachers, other than other issues. And I think I've also been hearing, as far as standard two with management operations, there's still some building issues that are taking place. Have they done remarkable work, the city and Rick Underwood and his group? Absolutely, no question in my mind. But when I keep getting notices from one school where the heater is still blowing out heat into the building, and they're being told that this is because that it's producing the hot water in the building, whether that's how that system is working. So I have a solution for that, which sounds kind of bizarre, but if they bought a 500-foot roll of PEX piping and tied into the hot water at the Robinson, they could bring that pipe over to the McAuliffe and they could shut off that boiler if necessary. The standard three, we're talking about the community engagement. How many followers do we actually have currently? Do we know that number?
Well, I'll have to get
a
that.
percentage increase.
Yeah, I'll have to get that number to you. That data is provided by our communications staff, so I'd have to get you the specific baseline number.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. So starting with standard one, I did have a few questions. One was, I know that we've talked about the graduation rate. Do we have a sense of how impactful the MCAS waiver has been? I know looking through the reports in the binder, I think it was a reference that about 170 students kind of made it to graduation because they didn't have to meet that MCAS requirement. So that's, I mean, out of a graduating class of, I'm guessing about 650, maybe more?
Over 700
Okay.
in our graduating class. There's, yeah, that question certainly looms, and it's, but one thing that should be known is that there was a determination of competency that was required across the state. So our students met the same threshold as every student across the state of Massachusetts. That was also waived again, the MCAS requirement for this year's graduating class. Our advocacy overall, though, unfortunately with MCAS was not met with any type of policy change other than the waiving of it for the graduation requirement. Our students are still taking MCAS across the district this year, even though the unprecedented nature of this year kind of creates a concern with how that data will be used in any way. But the impact of that waiver we'll see in future years, but this current year has a waiver as well on the MCAS, so it's a CD process that everybody across the state follows, so it might be difficult to ascertain the difference between those two, given the fact that some of the subsequent opportunities also were waived.
And I can certainly understand that. It's just something, as we look at the metrics over time, it's important to note that, and we can say this overall, this has been a year like none other. We can all certainly agree with that. One of my other kind of metrics in terms of the numbers that we've been sharing has been around the attendance rates. And I know that we're looking at 94% as a attendance rate across the district. I am concerned that that doesn't necessarily well represent engagement of our students. I think that, and this is coming from conversations I've had with teachers, primarily middle, high school level, which I do think are different probably than our elementary school experience. But, certainly we have a significant number of students who figured out pretty early that if they checked in homeroom, they were in. And their class engagement over the course of the day was not necessarily the same. So again, it's a number that I think, certainly we can, justify it as, that's the calculation, but it's important, I think, for all of us to recognize that there are some context that needs to be kind of included in that as well. Moving on with, let's see, Standard 2. I would be curious, and I know that you had included the slide deck on the diversity, the diversifying teacher program. I will agree that going, from 6% to 10% isn't the whole race, but it is significant, I think, in a one-year period to have that kind of increase. And I'm curious as to what you'd really point at in terms of how the district accomplished that.
Yeah, and so that's, I believe that's the 2-year from the baseline 2 years ago to now, 10%. And I think this is a question that we're going to often be asking ourselves when we have so many initiatives targeted after one outcome. Because here we're gathering data on how staff identify themselves. We're also have made shifts in terms of how we look at and go about our hiring process and our screening committees. The diversifying teacher leaders is about building and growing our current staff in terms of retaining our current staff. So is this a question of the greater measurement of the data, right? Inspect what you expect. This is now an established goal for us. Is it a question in terms of our hiring practices and hiring procedures? Is it an outcome of our greater retention, or all three together? I think we have a number of initiatives that are driving after one outcome and trying to distill which one in terms of causation. We can tell correlation in terms of practices. Causation might be a stretch for us to be able to identify. But if you need more data than that, more understanding than that, certainly Dr. Hall has been shepherding a lot of the hiring practices work, and Ms. Phillips has been shepherding the Diversifying Teacher Leaders Initiative.
I think that, part of it, and again, we're talking context, so, I do think that we're identifying more. I mean, I think that that's part of it. But I do think that the effort, particularly with UMass Lowell, in supporting particularly new teachers, I think is a really good focus for us across the board. Still in Standard 2 here, looking at the increase in grant funds, and you may not know this off the top of your head, but the percentage of these that were COVID specific?
Ms. Turner can answer that. That's a data point that she provided. Ms. Turner, do you have that answer?
I don't have the exact figure, but it is a substantial amount of those were COVID related.
Those were not the entitlement grants. Those were the competitive grants, correct?
They were competitive.
Okay. Having seen that in other industries too, organizations, let's say, there has been a huge influx, obviously, in the amount of funding that was made available in this area. And then looking at the improved agreements with facility and transportation vendors, just so I'm clear, this is kind of the savings we realized here really was a result of not having to use transportation services during the period when we were,
No, these are different savings. So if you recall, then actually the committee was heavily involved in this. This is a collective accomplishment. If you recall, this is within several of our leases, as well as with our transportation vendor, and renegotiating with those providers, utilizing certain strategies that we had discussed with the committee previously during the course of this year. This doesn't reflect the savings due to shutdown. This was a benefit of the negotiations that we engaged in throughout the year. And again, Dr. Hall can provide greater detail, so I don't extend beyond the limits of executive privilege.
so does it reflect the 45% that we had to,
On the
that agreement?
on the buses, Dr.
Yeah,
Hall, can you share
that's
what
the
this
one
includes?
Top of my head.
It includes the central office renegotiation, the option year that you had for one busing service that was put out to bid to get I believe, a 3-year contract with options, and then a renegotiation of another busing contract, and then there was some other minor ones too.
Thank you. With the facility safety audits, in my binder, and I'm going to laugh every time I talk about the binder, just so you know, but in the binder, I had the rubric for the safety audits. I didn't have results, so I don't know if that just wasn't in my binder or if that wasn't shared. I know you referenced that.
We have the results. It was actually, I was trying to keep the binder to a reasonable limit.
Okay, that is ridiculous, but okay, go ahead.
We're modeling for our colleagues what is expected when they turn in artifacts as part of the evaluation process. It is an expectation of all staff for their artifacts. We can certainly, Dr. Hall, you can share the files of the actual outcomes of those facility safety audits. Obviously, across all facilities, it would have been an extra lift on the cover of this binder.
And yet an opportunity to distill it into an executive summary that might have made it easier for us to understand. But that's okay. I appreciate that now. If there was anything else in that binder, it would have been, no one would have been able to carry it. So standard 3, the pilot family literacy program, I know that we're talking about plans moving forward for the Parent Leadership Institute. And this is more of a, I guess, a programmatic question. You know, as I was looking at the agenda items from that initiative, and there was some outcome data. I guess my first question would be around that. There didn't appear to be any kind of assessment in terms of, you know, parent engagement, changes in understanding, it was output heavy and outcome light.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I can't see behind me to see if Ms. Phillips was able to join us. She's opening up one of our family forums this evening right over in the mayor's reception area, and is going to join us. But what I can tell you is I joined the Green Elge graduation ceremony for families, and the parent testimonials couldn't have been more powerful, of what families shared as their experiences, how the classes empowered them as families, and across the board, every family shared, this is important, do more of this, how do we get more of this out to families? That theme along those lines, and that was from families, from parents, as they were being awarded their certificate of completion. They're sharing their testimonials, and they were quite powerful. Now that's anecdotal, but nonetheless, I think important.
So it would be important as we as you're, pulling together the proposal around the leadership initiative for parents, certainly building some outcomes, some assessment protocols into it will be really helpful, I think. I'd also say that we'll obviously need to really work on engagement. As I was looking through the numbers, we had 17% of the families who started actually finish. So out of, the close to 90 families that, or individuals, I'm assuming parents, who participated, it was a low completion rate, which, in a new program can happen, but it's certainly something that's going to need to be addressed in whatever proposal comes to us for our review. Let me see what else I've got here on this one. Yeah. And then finally, we've got the professional culture. I do think that citing, I know that we have some initial design work done on the clasp and some other items that are listed here. So I think that work we can certainly evaluate, but the actual implementation isn't part of our kind of experience yet at this point. So I can appreciate it being referenced as a work in progress, but not necessarily a summative topic for conversation. So that would be my response to your reflections. And then as we get into the actual evaluation tally sheet, I'll have a couple of extra questions. But thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the committee members who are here for any questions. Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Clark. And this doesn't directly relate to the evaluation right now, but while we brought up MCAS testing and graduation rates, do we have information or maybe on the past or as current as we can get on kids in the district who are not receiving a diploma because of not attaining proficiency in the MCAS? And that's for future reference, really. But like as part of those numbers, that would be something that would be beneficial for us to see.
We can pull that information for you. Whatever's available for us, we can pull for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from committee members at this point? Okay. Then we'll go into the actual summative evaluation tally sheet. I have copies for everyone. I have compiled all of the evaluation sheets that I received, so I'm going to hand them out now to everyone in attendance. And Mr. Dakota, I will send you an email with the version that I have, so give me a moment. Thanks.
So I will say, if you don't mind, so mine is still a work in progress based on questions and answers that I'm hoping to get this evening. So mine is not included on your, on the sheets that the chairwoman shared, but I'll be concluding it hopefully by the end of our process tonight.
Thank you. So the turnaround for this was fast, and there is a contractual obligation to have an evaluation compiled by June 1st. And so the effort has been to put all of this data together for that reason. But we can go through it now, and hoping that we can incorporate Ms. Martin's line-by-line evaluation items in as we go. So at this point, the overall rating that, based on my compilation of all of the data and everyone's input, is an overall rating of proficient. I'll give everyone a moment to look through. One question that came up for me as I was going through the evaluation is on indicator 1D, which relates to evaluation, actually. Dr. Boyd, as part of the binder that we received, there was not any information on evaluations of your direct reports and principals, and that is one of the indicators that we should be measuring you on. So if you can provide some additional detail on that, please.
Yes, thank you. All of those evaluations were completed for the prior year, and they're all on track to be completed this year. Dr. Hall can provide you, as our HR chief, any validation that the committee may need of that.
Dr. Hall, can you just confirm?
Yes, I verified what the superintendent just reported today with the assistance of Ms. Desmond.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Martin?
Just since you brought that one up. So in terms of, again, an artifact, I know past superintendents have given us reports that show it's certainly not based on an individual, assessment, but certainly for principals, and then from the HR office has been tasked with producing a document that would show us exactly what categories administrators or teachers were falling into, whether it was they were in year one of a improvement plan, or just so you'd get the full the numbers in the aggregate, not based on any individuals, because of course we don't want that, but that it would show us kind of over time the ability to kind of track that progress in terms of what our evaluations, not just, it's important that we know that they're happening. So that's, that was an important thing that was missing in the information we received, but also really understanding what the results are in terms of, on a district-wide basis, what the levels of performance are, so we can kind of have that information as we make other important decisions.
Thank you. We can certainly make that available for the committee, and I believe Dr. Hall provided a summary artifact at Ms. Clark's request earlier, but not on what you're requesting. That would be a more thorough deep dive, and he can do that as well.
Thank you. So I'd like to open it up to any committee members, or Mr. Dakota, if you've got any questions, additional questions on the rubric or the evaluation as a whole. As I said, the evaluation resulted in a rating of proficient. That is the recommendation that I am making. Would anyone like to make any comments or additional questions related to the summative evaluation?
On this first one?
Mm-hmm. We can go through it line by line if you'd like.
No, I just have a question on 1C, if I could.
Go ahead.
And it really just mirrors what the concerns around 1D. In terms of having some kind of an artifact that would show this activity happening and the successful implementation of it in the different school communities, because obviously there are differences. But being able to have something that would allow us to see, I know in my sense is that Dr. Guillory, kind of as part of his supervision of principals, this was part of what, his job entailed. But again, not having anything to really point at made it challenging.
I appreciate that. I can provide the committee just an update as we do our work going forward on this particular. I've been holding open office hours in schools, again, just to get greater feedback from staff based on some of the feedback we've received from our ESSER funds and other stuff happening in the district. And one of the areas of feedback that I received was that there's a feeling that we might be utilizing too much time for assessment purposes. So there might need to be actually here a scaling back of assessment to assess and measure student learning and growth and understanding. So this is an area that we will be taking a deep look at prior to the start of next year based on some of the feedback I'm getting within the open office hours I'm holding.
That note was coming to you from administrators?
That particular note came from an educator at one particular school, and I've asked them for further analysis of that. They're supposed to get that analysis back to me the end of this week.
Because I can understand it coming from kind of frontline, staff. This does, in my mind, kind of focus more specifically on the administrators, on principals, who I think are far more in tune with the need for assessment and all of that. But I can understand the note. I'm sure you've heard it more than once. And then, yeah, so those were my only ones on that, in that area. Thank you.
Any questions in indicator 2, management and operations? That first section was instructional leadership, so the second section, management.
Are we going page by page?
Just section by section, the 4 indicators, and then it,
On this?
Tally sheet?
yep.
So you're doing individual, or you're doing every?
Nope. And I'm asking if anyone has any additional questions or needs any clarification on any of these indicators, or feedback. Go ahead, Ms.
I don't have a specific question about a section, more an overall question. Why are we asking questions now when the evaluation was supposed to already be done, which I'm still struggling with getting my comments in? It seems like this should have happened, and then that's the standard process, right? As we see in the MASC guide for superintendent evaluations, is that you have an experience, you get to experience the superintendent presenting his evidence, and then we get to ask questions, and then we make the decision about the evaluation. So it seems moot to be asking questions now. I don't know if anybody has a suggested answer for that. If not, I'll go on to my second question, which is, why is Mr. Lay voting on the superintendent's evaluation? He has attended 1 school committee meeting. That would be like a classroom teacher attending 1 class and grading a student for a year's work of academic work. It does not seem appropriate. I can see why, no fault or personally against Mr. Lay. He is on the school committee right now, but he did not serve over the last 2 years. He attended 1 meeting last week, and I just want to, for the record, state that I do not think it's appropriate. I don't think in any real-world situation would we consider it appropriate to have somebody who attended 1 meeting to be assessing the superintendent over a body of work that spans 2 years, but even with the focus on the last year. So I don't know if anybody would like to comment on that, but that would be my real concern, my real question here.
So I did place a call to the executive director of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees today and spoke with Glenn Kuchar about this very item. And he confirmed that, yes, the school committee member, Mr. Lay, has all rights and responsibilities of a full committee member, which is providing an evaluation, participating in this process. He did mention that many school committees develop protocols at the beginning of the process. We did not, and that is something that I think we could look into as this period closes and we open up the next evaluation cycle, which is basically immediately following this one. I would recommend that we meet as a committee and make create some protocols.
I think that we should make a decision right now. I also spoke with Glenn Kuchar when I got the text about the individual meetings. And I asked him about that. He said, standard is 6 months. It is up to the purview of this committee. So I would like to make a motion that a school committee member that attends 1 meeting, does not have the depth of experience, knowledge, or understanding of what we've gone through for the last year, to be able to evaluate in a way that I think is going to be effective. So I would make that in the form of a motion. Oh, wait, I can't make a motion. I'm on personnel. So I'm looking for some guidance here about maybe we do this on the floor Wednesday. I can't make a motion. I just realized that. Sorry.
Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We can certainly have conversations around, Mr. Lay's experience level with, what the superintendent has done this year. But I think we need to organize ourselves better as far as how we're going to evaluate in the future.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you know, one of our committee members' evaluation isn't even in there, and so does Ms. Martin's opinion not even contribute to the overall thing? Is what I'm saying. I mean, if one person doesn't even have to submit their things, and that we didn't set any rules or anything. I'm not, you know, but if one person doesn't submit it and we already have the final results, like it seems as if Mrs. Martin's opinion doesn't matter. So why does Dominic's? I guess. So I think we need to really, you know, and I agree with some of the other comments that, you know, maybe something like this needed to happen beforehand. I don't know. I think we do need to get on the same page, though. As far as a motion specific to this situation, I mean, I don't know how many times in the future we're going to have committee members with 1 day of experience or 1 meeting of experience. So we can certainly talk about that, but I don't know. I think that's for another time, not tonight. Thank you.
Sure, I don't know if it is too late, but I agree that, you know, it's unfortunate that Mr. Lay just get on, but I don't see how he can do an evaluation with one meeting. And I know that we go through these standards and we have the standard, but usually what I'm used to with the evaluations is I'm evaluating the person that I'm in charge of, not his team. And it just seems very, like we've made this very complicated and we've made it diluted, and I appreciate all the information we got, but that binder was ridiculous. You know, we're supposed to be evaluating on our day-to-day interaction throughout the whole year. I mean, that's an evaluation. We hire and fire the superintendent, and we're not evaluating his team. We have nothing to do with his hires. He's the one that's responsible for us. What our goals are, you know, high expectations in schools, high teacher standards, professional development. That's what we're supposed to be evaluating him on. So, and again, you know, Mr. Lay's comments here skew the results. I don't see how, you know, for whatever you put down on there, it just, you know, it either adds to it or it hurts it, but it really, you know, shouldn't be in there. So that'd be my comments on that.
Mr. Lay?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I feel that my vote should be counted, and I should carry my duty as an elected member of the school committee, and therefore I should have the right to evaluate the superintendent just like everybody else. I have, though I have just attended 1 week of meeting in this year, however, I have served before, and I have served with superintendent before the time I didn't get elected. So, and I have always been involved, and I feel that I have never left. So, in my opinion, I have the right understanding of what is happening. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, were you?
Just a couple quick notes. To Mr. Dillon's point, you know, I have told the chairperson that I will complete my numbers, my letters, whatever, by the end of this meeting, so she'll be able to conclude that, and we'll be able to take action at our next school committee meeting. Again, a subcommittee can't do anything anyway, so it won't be completed until it gets presented to the full committee. I, you know, share the concerns of Mr. Lay in you rejoining the committee. I understand your perspective. you know? And I think that we just have to, as you state to us that you've remained very involved and you've been paying attention, we have to take you at your word. And I do think moving forward, we should have a procedure in place, because again, as the MASC kind of recommends, there should be a minimum of 6 months of time on task in order to evaluate performance. But I think, you know, again, as I had said to Ms. Clark, I mean, this was not something we could anticipate, you know. So there are times that you just, you know, you can only imagine so much happening. But, you know, again, I think certainly moving forward in the future, we should have those conversations around what we think is appropriate in terms of experience and exposure before the ability to participate in a professional evaluation. But the rules are the rules, and unfortunately, I don't think we can change them at this late date. But we can't, that's the problem.
Not
at this point.
retroactively. These protocols were supposed to have been decided at the beginning of the process, and I recommend that we do that immediately following this evaluation cycle. But we can't make the rules now going back, so.
And again, it is I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is public record, so, I mean, all of the responses are shared with the public. They'll all see, you know, kind of how each committee member is approaching the evaluation. So, I mean, I think that we all stand behind what we've, you know, kind of determined as our levels, and that's, I mean, that's part of the public's, you know, exposure to what this process is and does.
Ms. Doherty?
I think it clearly speaks to the fact that this committee had no discussion around the evaluation process or the timeline for doing it. We didn't discuss what was going to happen about Mr. Lay being on, because we weren't aware that we were even doing this within less than a week, which is really what happened. Last November, I spoke on the floor about the need to evaluate the superintendent. At that time, he had been with us for more than a year. This coming July 1st, it'll be 2 years. Imagine a student in class for 2 academic years without quizzes or grades, or even just take the last year without quizzes or grades or assessment. Yet it wasn't until last Friday when I got this book and the subsequent text from the superintendent that I knew we were expected to evaluate him tonight. About this book, I think it's worth noting that it weighs just over 11 pounds. The book is 4 inches high, of hundreds of pages, printed on one side only. By the way, a lot of trees died for it. The text that was sent to the entire committee shortly after the document was dropped off Friday evening read, quote, "Team, good evening. You should have received my annual evaluation reflection supporting documents today. If not, please let me know. I'm looking forward to your feedback and hoping to schedule one-on-one meetings with each of you for next week. Minerva will contact you on Monday. If you'd prefer to meet this weekend, let me know. Lunch is always on me, smiley face. Stay safe and be well. Joel." For the record, in addition to my concerns about violations to open meeting law and the fact that this discussion, his presenting of the evidence, our asking questions, our then talking amongst each other about what our thoughts were, about what had worked, what didn't work, feedback that was going to help move us forward. In addition to concern, none of that had happened. On Monday, I received a text from the personnel chair asking for my evaluation to be completed by Tuesday evening. Friday, this gets delivered, and I'm expected to have, so I understand, Ms. Martin, why you haven't filled out your ratings. I sent the ratings over on my lunch break today between a conference I was at, but I have not completed my comments, because as the evaluation says, if you rate somebody exemplary or you rate somebody needs improvement or lower, you need to give some evidence. I mean, the superintendent offers evidence in support of the standards and goals we set together. It is up to us to decide the evidence is sufficient or whether it conflicts with evidence we've seen other places, or observed, or heard on our own. This is a very important part of the role of being on the school committee. And the fact that this chair and this superintendent expected us to do this work with this kind of artifacts document from Friday to Tuesday or even Wednesday. I appreciate the extension to Wednesday. I was up till midnight last night going through this stuff. And then still, I'm working on my comments, which I reserve to make more comments Wednesday night when we meet as a whole committee. But I think to sit there and say, oh, now it's too late, that we have to let a member who attended one school committee meeting, who, as the mayor noted, skews the results, because we have, Mr. Lay has given 12 exemplaries and 8 proficients. I don't see anybody else giving that many exemplaries of this committee, even people who I know are full supporters. So I have major concerns with the way this is happening and the way it continues to move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Dillon?
Yes, thank you. I feel like I'm hearing a lot of contradictions tonight. I'm just wondering why Mr. Lay's ratings for his evaluation matter, what they are. 12 exemplar, I mean, why do they matter? Would we not be hearing these questions tonight if he had rated him poorly? Because I don't know, I haven't heard anything about this, these issues leading up till today. Now, I agree that the time period was extremely short. I mean, I was taking every second that I could with my biceps are a little bigger this week because I was holding that damn thing all, for a week. And so there was a pain. But, tonight, are we mad because Dominic rated him well? I mean, we got a really big binder here, and everybody's complaining about it. Well, I happen to remember most meetings where the superintendent gets picked apart because he doesn't supply enough information. It's not detailed enough. I don't know, 900 pages, is that detailed enough? You've been asking for it. And, to go back to the results of what Mr. Lay put in, everybody's so worried about which way it gets skewed. Well, he gave a good evaluation, and now everybody's got a problem with it. And also, I have a problem with Ms. Martin not having hers submitted, because we all kind of submitted this blind. And so, if you want to talk about skewing, I mean, already knowing the results before you make your submission, it could be knowingly skewing the results and totally affect decision making. So I don't know what the hell the problem is. I mean, it sounds like a lot of personal stuff going on, and even the mayor. We should be evaluating him on day-to-day interactions. I mean, what is it? Whether you like somebody or not? No, it's performance evaluation, correct? It's not character evaluation. So I just don't know what the hell we're doing here, as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. So a few comments, and then I would like to make a motion. But first, I'd just like to say, the superintendent's contract dictates when the evaluation process happens. That was signed in 2019, prior to my being here. I believe many of you were a part of that process, but there is a time-bound evaluation section. So it says by June 1st. That is always going to fall on the tail of the budget cycle, which is exactly what happened this year. And we are evaluating in a very short period between the end of the budget and June 1st. And so that is why we're here this time around. Now that we have gone through this cycle this time, as I said earlier, I believe that we should meet very soon about protocols for the next evaluation cycle so that we can give ourselves more time and do things a little bit differently than this point. But at this point in time, the recommendation is a proficient rating based on the evaluations I have received, and I would like to make a motion to accept the evaluation with the integration of Ms. Martin's line item ratings and comments into the final version with an overall rating of proficient. Do I have a second? I need a personnel subcommittee at an HR.
I'm sorry, I'm not prepared yet. We haven't gone through the rest of the tally.
Oh,
We got distracted,
we
so.
did get distracted.
Yeah.
So indicator, I think we did an indicator 2, also a proficient rating if there was any additional questions that you had. And
Now I gotta get back to where we were. I did have a question around, so with management and operations, just looking for, on indicator, let's see, 3B. I know that we've had some information on some of the activities that have gone on, you know, obviously in terms of outreach to parents and whatnot. You know, I can tell you right now, that would be an area where I think we have, and the district has made some important improvements, but I don't think we're there yet, and I think you'd reflect that same feeling.
If I could, Ms. Martin,
Sure.
because it's an important area of reflection. The connections and sharing responsibility and connecting with people has been some of the most difficulty during this year. Typically, we run initiatives we call Breakfast with Boyd. We did those before the pandemic shut down, found a lot of interest, a lot of attendance. Those types of, that would be me going out having breakfast with the PTO and other families as they arrived to school. We did those all the way up until the shutdown last March, and trying to find the mechanism that we could to mimic, replicate, or even approximate that type of experience, near to impossible. We did fireside chats, we did virtual forums, we did electronic newsletters, but none of that reaches the level of that face-to-face interaction, which is why I think, you know, it's so valuable, even just open office hours at a school, even if 1 or 2 people stop by. That conversation is far more meaningful than, you know, a webinar format or something like that that may be possible in this environment. So I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right, and we are very much looking forward to next year's environment where we can reestablish some of those things that we launched pre-COVID-19.
Excellent. And then my only other are in the final, the professional culture area, and it is items D and F. And in my mind, these are really very closely linked. I do think that, and I have certainly from responses from across the district in terms of from staff at many, many different levels, I have heard feedback that there is a certain concern in questioning or bringing up alternative solutions or really doing anything that kind of questions the direction that the superintendent's office is driving in. I do think that there are more constructive ways for that to happen, and this is one of those things where it isn't, no, that's not true. It's not one of those kind of situations. It's one of those situations where even if the perception is out there, it's a problem. Mm-hmm. So, and I've heard it enough that it rises to the level that I have concerns about it. And you can take this for what it's worth. I've been doing this for a long time. I am not a particularly reactionary committee member. So this is not a kind of knee-jerk kind of thing. I say it to you as a constructive opportunity that this is the prevailing sentiment from what I'm hearing. And it's something that will certainly, you should be aware of so that you can address it. So that's just kind of in those 2 areas there in terms of managing conflict, in terms of being able to kind of build a trusting environment where there is opportunities for conversation and for alternative, situations and suggestions. So those were the two areas on that last professional culture area where I had concerns.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. So I would just like to repeat my motion. My motion is to accept the evaluation with the integration of Ms. Martin's line item ratings and comments into the final version with an overall rating of proficient.
I'd make that motion, and I can tell you in advance that my numbers aren't going to change anything.
Thank you.
I'm sorry? Yeah, I'll make the motion as the chair represented it. You have to second.
Second. Thank you.
Just you and me, kid.
Okay.
There's only so many options.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So I haven't heard Mr. Dakota.
Mr. Dakota, are you still there?
Yes?
Sorry.
Did you hear the
Aye.
motion?
No,
Aye.
no,
Okay.
aye.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, were you going to say something else, or?
No, I was just gonna say, so now we need to recommend it to the full committee for consideration on Wednesday. Is that
Correct, on June 2nd. Yes. Thank you. So at this point, it is 7:15. I would ask what the will of the body, the subcommittee is. Would you like to enter into the next portion of this, review job descriptions currently in suspense account, or schedule a separate subcommittee meeting to go through this? I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I always felt that we should do it in two separate meetings, but that's just my own personal opinion. I don't know how Mr. Dakota or anyone else feels.
I agree with my colleague.
I'm sorry?
He agrees.
Well, then I'd make a motion that we table the review of job descriptions and ask the superintendent secretary to pull for another date for hopefully next week. I know that things are getting a little, timing will get a little challenging, but the reality is that there are major budget decisions that we can't move forward with until we address that, so that's my motion,
Second.
in like a paragraph and a half.
And I heard a second from Mr. Dakota.
I second.
If I could, Madam Chair?
Yes.
You have a bit of time as a committee. The urgency is for those services that you would like as a committee to stand up for the first day of school. Those would be on the heightened timeline of getting positions posted in June. Otherwise, it's a 3-year grant cycle. Also, based on the feedback we've received, we want to make a determination of which services would we perhaps want to move back into dollars that could perhaps be reallocated to schools through fair student funding. And if we're going to reallocate through fair student funding, then that too might want to follow a more urgent timeline while we have staff still in schools. But other than those two decisions, it is a 3-year grant cycle, and I don't want the committee to feel like you have to make an immediate decision on those things that you are not prepared to implement for the start of next school year. One of those examples, obviously, there's a significant amount of money within the facilities line. That's not an area that's going to be completed prior to the start of school.
Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Clark. I guess one of my questions, Dr. Boyd just answered. I just wanted to check on the time frame and if that was going to delay anything. I guess I agree that we can have this conversation another time, because I think it is going to get in depth. But I mean, I was ready to do it tonight. I mean, you know, took work off. I could have stayed home. I mean, I could have stayed at work, to be honest with you.
It's up to the
We
chair,
gotta,
so you can.
no, and I don't even want to do it tonight now, but like, you know, we gotta, man, I know it's been rough lately, but we gotta get our act together. As a committee, myself as well. Sorry if you were gonna take offense to that.
I don't know.
It's talking about all of us.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes, I have a question. So I'm still working on my comments, because you know, that's important. It's an important part of the evaluation. So if this is going to be discussed at next Wednesday's meeting, so it would have to be, are they going to be uploaded? Is individual, so these were some of the decisions we would have made if we had a meeting discussing how we were going to do the process.
It would be at the beginning of the evaluation cycle, we develop protocols, so that's
Right.
what we'll do.
And as I did reference earlier, I did ask about this in November.
In November, we were in the current, you asked about doing an evaluation, the prior year's evaluation, which at that point was a done cycle, we were done. So then we were in this year's evaluation.
No, I was talking about scheduling an evaluation moving into the year, but
Oh.
it doesn't matter now, I just want to know, because the way we've done it in the past is you're able to speak on the floor to kind of, you know, justify your rating. And so I want to make sure that I have that opportunity. I'm only at standard 2. And I'm not going to be saying a lot, believe me. I'll just be doing a couple of bullets on each one. But I just want to make sure that if I get that, would I send that to this Minerva? Would I send that to you? Who would get those comments, and how are we going to, I mean, Ms. Martin referenced it's all a public document, so the comments go in individually as part of the minutes? I'm not sure.
They go into the summative evaluation document that would be submitted for the meeting next Wednesday. So it must be submitted by tomorrow in order to be on the meeting agenda for next Wednesday. And that's why Ms. Martin is working to provide these to me now so that I can incorporate them and get that on the agenda properly. So if you have comments that you would like included. Mhm.
And just one final comment, as you made me think of it when you said it's summative evaluation, and that's where the skewing comes in, because it's all combined to one.
There's one overall rating,
Right,
correct?
right.
Right.
Okay, so I would send that to you then directly, my comments?
Yes, if you have any comments that you would like incorporated into the evaluation,
I'll just email it
just
to you
email them to me directly.
by
Yes.
tomorrow.
I would say by tomorrow morning, because I need to provide this to Minerva so that it can be added to the agenda for it by the time it needs to be posted tomorrow.
So
right, with the
again,
documents.
less than a week to do the evaluation.
There was an email that went out about 2+ weeks ago that spoke about the evaluation at that time. It did, and you're on it, and I confirmed that.
But I was not on an email that pulled for tonight's meeting about the evaluation. When we discussed tonight's meeting at last Wednesday's public school committee meeting, we were going to do the job descriptions. That was what we talked about. There was no mention that we were doing the evaluation, and I had no idea this book was going to be arriving Friday night. So those are the facts.
Okay.
And that's the timeline.
Thank
Less than a week. It's not reasonable.
Thank
But
you.
thank you.
Anything further?
So motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Ms. Martin,
Second?
second by Mr. Dakota. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.